Hi and welcome to this video on how to build a data strategy. This is a two-part video series. In this first part, we're going to take a look at what is a data strategy, why you need one, and kind of all of the steps as an overview of what do you need to do. In the second part video, we actually are going to build the data strategy. We have a workbook that you can download and follow along or use on your own time to build a data strategy. So, all right, without further ado, let's get started. I thought I would start with a small introduction on who I am. So my name is Eric Boissonneau. I'm the founder of Systematik, a full stack data consulting agency founded in 2019 from Montreal. We worked with clients such as Wounded Warrior Project, Good Ranchers, Axon, Zendesk, and many more to help them extract value from their data. So building a data strategy is something we're very familiar with. All right. So what is a data strategy? So a data strategy is basically a plan that outlines how you're going to win using data, how you're going to achieve your goals using data. So you've probably heard that before. What's get measured gets managed. So the idea is to build a plan that will help you measure the correct thing and report correctly, understand your data, in order to reach your goals. So this workshop, this video is for anyone who's looking to make business decisions using data. So why do you need a data strategy? Why can't you just go and build a dashboard right away or just start coding in your database right away? So if you've done any sorts of project before, you probably know that the projects that went well, smoothly, delivered value, are the one that had a great plan. You asked the right question up front. You understood the whole point of what we're trying to build and what's the end goal here. You talked with many stakeholders to figure out, to get multiple point of view of the thing that needs to be built. So if you have that experience, it's basically what a data strategy is, but solely related on your data. So it's gonna give you a clear direction and deliverables. It also forces you to think about stuff that you might not think otherwise, like security, compliance. If you get started right away and just start building, you might not think about those things, data governance. And then later on, it bites you because now you might have to redo a bunch of work to be compliant or because you didn't build with security in mind. So having a data strategy will help you kind of prepare for that in a smarter way. It will also help you get value from your data faster. Even though you have to spend some time on building the plan, sometimes what we would build right away is not necessarily what's going to drive value. And if you don't have a plan, you might spend a bunch of time building the wrong thing. So this is what I mean by it's going to deliver value faster. Yes, you'll spend some time on planning, but you'll build the right thing right away, which will save you time and money. It will also help you manage expectations. After doing a bunch of data projects, I realized that some people think that data is this kind of a magic bullet that will solve and answer any question and basically just run your business. So having a data strategy will help you kind of manage those expectations about what it can, what it cannot do, how long it's going to take, and how much money it's going to cost, right? So this is very important because when we start building just right away, there's no end in sight. We don't have a clear deadline. We don't have a clear deliverables. So we're just like, how long are we going to keep pouring money in this thing without no real return? So that's another thing. Also helps you get a more holistic view of what you're trying to do, a unified approach, right? If sometimes I see that in companies, there will be this one person that's really interested in data and they will start building right away in their own bubble and not thinking about what other departments might need or what are the constraints that other departments have that they might not be aware of, or some other things that they should consider that they don't know. So by having a data strategy, it forces you to talk with the main stakeholders and get these various point of views that will be very helpful in order to make sure that you're building the right thing. And also sometimes by knowing what two departments might need. With just a small tweaks, you'll be able to offer a lot of value to both departments. But if you didn't even talk to that other department and just focus on yours, you're missing out on providing value to this other department for little, very little additional effort. So that's really important. Another thing, and I think this might be the most underrated thing about building a data strategy, is how much better your data quality is going to be as a result of proper planning. When we just go ahead and start building, we don't think about how is the data actually collected? Do we have all of the data points we need? How often do we want to refresh this report? How do we make sure that we keep this data accurate over time? Do we have any naming conventions we could use? Do we have any better way to input this data if it's some data that's not system generated? A data strategy will help you figure that out and improve the data quality. And if the data quality is higher, not only the decisions you're going to take from your data are going to be much better as a result of that. And lastly, having a data strategy will help you unlock budget for those projects because you have a clear plan and a clear scope, how much it is going to cost, how long it's going to take, but also just plan also if you'll need maybe to move one developer from building something to this new project, you'll be able to plan and not have everyone or if you need to hire a consultant and you'll be able to plan for that and not just overwork your team. So just a side note, this is not a sales presentation disguised as a workshop. I hate those. You sign up, you get there, and half of the presentation is a sales pitch and the rest of the information is just something you could have found very easily with a quick Google search. This is not a low value lead magnet. I've spent a lot of time on this. And if you follow along and you do the workshop, you'll get a lot of value out of this. So I might not be very good at this thing, working and doing video recording and presentation, but I'm very good at what I do, extracting value from data. And if you follow along, I'm sure you'll get a ton of value out of this. All right, so just before we move up to the next section and really go into each steps, I just want to give you an overview of what we're going to cover. So we'll cover who needs to be involved in a data strategy when building a data strategy. What are the questions are we trying to answer and why? What is the impact answering those questions will have on the business? What needs to be done to answer those questions? The technology we'll have to use to answer those questions. The constraints. What are the constraints we have if we really want to build these things like budget, security, compliance, and finally, once we have all of that information, how do we break that down into smaller projects and make sure that every small project or sprint is value packed and moves the business forward. So if that's something you're interested in, stay with me and we're going to cover each step and then do the workbook. All right. See you there. All right. So the first step to building your data strategy is to get the stakeholders involved. All right. So if you just have a small company, it's just you, then that's fine. But if you're working in a bigger company, you might need to involve the CMO, CEO, CFO, and many other people, depending on the size of your organization. So the first thing is to involve anyone that will benefit from this initiative and try to get the buy-in from everyone. Because as I said, it's very important to get the feedback and input of the stakeholders. And also, if they are excited about the project and can get behind it, it will move much faster. And you will also get those diverse perspectives, but also get the budget. Which is very important because if you don't have that, well, your project is dead on day one, right? So now you have a lot of stakeholders involved, but who leads the initiative, right? Because you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. So the person who's going to lead the data strategy or is someone normally who can talk both language, right? Who can talk with the like maybe data engineers and data analysts and understands the business, the technical side of things, but also can easily talk more of a business jargon with the stakeholders and translate, right? So normally stakeholders are not that interested in the technical part. Some are, and that's, you need to be able to just talk both language, right? So how to engage stakeholders? First, you need to know who they are. And then ideally, once you know who they are, you kind of tailor your message to each of them. So if one of them is marketing, then it would be a good thing to kind of explain to them like, hey, what if you had your real return on ad spend for each platform, and not necessarily what each platform report, but a more honest representation of your return on ad spend, website conversion rates, stuff like that. Talk their language and tailor your message to them. Also clarify their responsibilities. Some stakeholders, they might be interested in being involved, but they have a lot of other things to take care of. So clarify what will be their responsibility, and this will ensure also that if you have their agreement, that they follow through. And it's not like as it's coming, right? It was planned. So all right, we'll need like first meeting, discovery. I want to hear everything about how data could help you do your job. And then we'll have another meeting when we have a first version of a dashboard to get your feedback and kind of clarify at which point in the process they will need to be involved. And then if you can, again, use their language, demonstrate maybe from case studies you found online or even small wins you were able to get using data, just share that with them just to kind of prove your point. And finally, start with small scale project to just, again, show the value and potential value at a bigger scale. One pro tip I have for you is that digital marketing tends to be a great place to start. And this is because normally the questions are pretty straightforward or always the same, at least at the beginning, like what's the return on ad spend, conversion rate, cost per acquisition, which marketing channel is generating the most revenue or has the best cost per acquisition. And the data source are all standardized as well, right? Facebook ads data, Google ads data, LinkedIn ads. It's always like, it's the same structure. So you'll be able to leverage tools to make this much easier than if you were building something extremely custom. So now that we know who the stakeholders are, it's time for discovery. So the discovery process is basically meeting with every stakeholders, either in a single big meeting or individually, and ask them questions about what questions do they like, would they be interested in answering using data, what's their current way of answering those questions, what would be the ideal state and ideal way of answering those questions, and kind of prepare the requirements for your data pipeline. What is the point of your data pipeline? It starts with questions. So mostly the work will be done in the data strategy workbook. So here's a kind of preview of what it looks like. You're going to list out the questions, current way of answering, and we'll go through that in the next video when we fill out the data strategy workbook. But this is just to kind of give you an overview. So you list out the questions, the challenge of current way, what are the actions you'd take if you had answer to those questions, and all sorts of things, right? So we'll go over more of the step-by-step in the next video, but this is just to give you an overview. We'll assess the impact of answering those questions as best as we can. This is just really to prioritize which questions should be answered first, which question could be kind of combined because they use all of the same data source and are very close to each other or complement each other very well, or sometimes even they benefit multiple departments. So that's how we're going to determine what the impact would be, right? And there's a kind of list of questions to answer to determine the business impact, but it's not set in stone, right? Even if the scores comes as a low impact question, but you still think that it's a high impact question, you can modify that in the document. And after that, again, part of the discovery process, we'll go through the data profiling exercise. basically what this is just to assess the current state of that data. Is it accessible? Is it accurate? If not, what do we need to do to make it accurate moving forward? Can we fix historical data? All of these questions, because now you listed the questions you'd like to be able to answer. You know which data source has that data, but then you need to figure out what's the current state of that data. Is it usable? So again, this is all part of the workshop where we're gonna kind of be a bit more tactical about this. But the idea is to classify your data into one of these 4 buckets. The data is either good moving forward, could be good if we fix it, or bad and we need to do something about it because it's not good enough for data analysis. All right, so now we move on to data governance. So this is a kind of a big word and it's not very clear to everyone what this means. So let's start with a definition. Data governance is the framework of an organization's policies, procedures, and standards to ensure that its data is accurate, accessible, secure, and used responsibly. So basically, this is a big bucket, and this is basically where you're going to define how you're going to use that data, document, and over the whole lifetime of the data, from data collection to even retirement when we delete it, right? This is a iterative process. You don't need to go crazy with that. Just do what your organization needs, because this will drastically change depending on the size and maturity of your organization. So if you're a very small company, you definitely don't need the same level of security, compliance, and all of that a bigger enterprise level like company might have. But here's a few pointers of what you'd need in your data governance plan. And again, we'll go through that in the workbook. This is just an overview. So you'll need to build a business glossary. So basically just like defining your KPIs. What does revenue means to you? What does return on ad spend means to you? It might seem simple. You might be able to find a definition online with a quick Google search, but this does not mean that it is how your CFO calculate revenue. Return on ad spend might change from company to company. Some companies might include, I don't know, like some might not include the fees paid to the marketing agency. Some might. Again, it is just important to define those KPIs so that when there are meetings and strategies and business decision taken on those specific KPIs, that everyone agrees that everyone's on the same page, right? Another thing that you'll want to do is basically just do a diagram of what's your data architecture looks like. So just to give you an example, over here, this is a very, very simple diagram, but it just shows your data source are over here. They go to Google BigQuery. Those data source here, we extract the data using Fivetran. Then we use dbt for data transformation. And once the data is transformed, it goes back into BigQuery where we connect it to Looker Studios for dashboard. This is an example, but this is very helpful just to know, like very high level, like how is the data flowing in our systems, all right? Then how are you going to ensure that data quality stays at the level you need? Who owns which data? So who's the owner of some KPIs? Or maybe, let's say marketing has a responsibility to maintain a UTM Google Sheets, or maybe they pay some influencers to promote their product. They need to maintain a cost sheets. So that's also part of data governance, where you define who's responsible to maintain and ensure that the data quality stays high. Also security management, who has access to what and at which level? Are they able to edit and transform the data, or even delete some tables in your data warehouse, or they just have view access? So it's good practice to define who has access to what, to which dashboard, and so on. And then planning maintenance is something very important. You'll need to figure out how much maintenance your pipeline is going to need and who's going to handle that, because it's not a set it once and forget it. Data is consistently changing, whether it's your platforms that change the data structure, like Google Analytics, Google Ads, Facebook ads. The data structure will change all the time. There's updates. It's just part of software and technology, and your company needs will change as well. So maintenance will be required. How you're going to handle that also should be part of your data governance plan. But just to say it again, data governance is an iterative process. Do not overcomplicate this. It will grow as your data pipeline, as your data department grows. The data governance and documentation will grow with it as well. But it's good practice to at least get a head start and the fundamentals in place, because if you're trying to move too fast, this will suffer and it will bite you down the line. So that's it about data governance, and let's move on to the next step. We can now start looking into which technologies are we going to use to make this all happen. So the discovery and data governance steps pretty much created, and you'll see once we fill out the data strategy workbook, the output of that is pretty much all of the requirements that our data platform needs to meet, right? So we have all of these questions. These questions generated a bunch of data source and requirements like, okay, do we need real-time data or like batch every day? That's fine. What are the data source we need? What is the level of security we need? So it created a bunch of requirements, and from that, we'll be able to choose and make an informed decision about the technology. So again, that's something I see all the time. People go in and choose their tech stack even before they established or figured out like what are requirements, like what do we need to see in our data architecture. So let's get to it. What do I mean by data platform? Basically, that's all of the technology that will handle from data source, like the data being generated. How do we transport that data? So move the data to your data storage, data warehouse. And then how do we transform that data, combine the data, and then how do we do data analysis, so dashboards or even custom queries. All right. It can become overwhelming because there's so many platforms out there. So I won't go into details about which you should choose, because anyways, depending on your requirements, your need might differ, but I'll give you some pointers on how you can make this process a bit simpler. All right. So this is what we typically work with at Systematik. So we are focused mainly on the Google stack. So we use Google Cloud Platform. We like Fivetran as an ETL when possible. So if we need to move like Google Ads, Facebook Ads, data into a data warehouse, we like Fivetran. Again, data storage, we use Google Cloud, and data warehouse, Google BigQuery. And for data transformation, we use dbt. We are Fivetran and dbt partners. We partnered with them because we were using their product and really liked them. So it was just a natural partnership for us. And when it comes to data analysis dashboards, we are very flexible. We use mainly Looker Studio, but can use Looker, Power BI, Tableau, because we do most of our transformation and in dbt. So the dashboarding tool then becomes a bit more irrelevant because we're not much data transformation inside that tool. It's all on the back end, and really the dashboard is really just to show the data in a easy to understand manner, but it's not doing any of the heavy lifting. All right. So that's our tech stack. If you're mainly on the Google Cloud or Google Stack, this is a good place to start. Or if you don't have any preference because you don't have anything in place right now, we chose that tech stack because we think it's the best out there. All right. But if you still have your requirements and you need to make an informed decision, then you should consider those things. So what is the technology that you're currently using in your business? So are you mainly on the Google stack, like Google Workspace, Google Sheets, or more Microsoft Teams, and on like obviously Windows and such? So then you might consider Azure for your cloud provider instead of Google Cloud Platform. So consider what you're currently using. Also, when you're choosing, if you decide to go with multiple tools, consider how they integrate with each other. For example, Google Cloud Platform works well with Looker because they're both Google product. Fivetran works well with dbt because they collaborate on a lot of things like pre-built data transformation package that fits well with Fivetran's schema. So consider how each tool work together. Then audit your team. What are they used to work with, right? It doesn't make any sense if everyone in your organization is used to work with Tableau and you have some expert in that software. Like don't go and choose Looker. It doesn't make sense. You're going to have to train a bunch of people. Everything's going to be slower. Like you need to consider your team and what you already have. And the most important part is obviously to consider the list of requirements you created from the discovery and data governance process. So you now have a bunch of requirements. You need to go in and make sure that the architecture you're planning on using can meet those requirements. And finally, pricing. So sometimes cloud platforms, they can make it a bit complicated to assess pricing. So this is a bit tricky. Also, licensing cost for platforms like Tableau, there's a bunch of things to consider, but nonetheless, you need to take that into account if you want to make an informed decision. Which brings us to all-in-one solution trap. When choosing your data platform, you'll find some technologies that kind of their selling proposition is that they are all in one. So what do we mean by all in one? It means that they have data visualization capabilities. They natively connect to many different data sources across many industries. So they don't just connect to marketing, like paid ads, for example. They also connect to CRM, they connect to ERPs, and they offer a robust set of data transformation features. So they allow you to combine data from multiple sources to run calculation and all of that. That's what we at least consider a all-in-one solution. So let me explain why, even though they sound amazing, why we don't recommend going that route. So one of the thing is a platform that does too much is normally very difficult to learn. And even if, let's say you have Tableau expert that are used to like build dashboard, maybe they're not used to use the data transformation feature or maybe even the ETL features, right? Another thing, and this is very important, is they have partial connectors. So they will say we connect to Shopify, for example. We have a native connector to Shopify and you need that. That's part of your requirements. But then when you investigate and connect to Shopify, you realize that they connect to Shopify, but only to the order table, right? Where all of the orders are. But they don't connect to the refund table from Shopify, or they don't connect to the customer table from Shopify, which means that, yeah, okay, that's right. They connect to Shopify, but you're not able to get all of the data from your Shopify. So you might not be able to answer all of the questions you have by using that connector. So this goes hand in hand with missing features, but missing features can be even broader. Like they don't offer the security features you need. They don't, like, for example, you'd like to have some report only for upper management and other reports for, let's say, just the organization as a whole. So if they don't offer you to do that split, for example, that might be an issue. But yeah, so it's really important to read the fine prints and even test it out. Like, okay, they connect to this data source, but what do they connect with actually? It's also very difficult to enforce basic data governance with those kind of platform. They tend to not have all of the same level of security that a full-on data pipeline would give you. They don't necessarily have alerts. It's also very hard to document what are the data transformation going on inside. So you basically just have to kind of open a dashboard and open each metrics, and there's no centralized way of seeing how things work. So this is another big disadvantage. And you don't necessarily own your data. So if they have a connector from Shopify and it gets the data from Shopify and sends it, and then you have a dashboard from that, it doesn't mean that your data is stored somewhere. So if, for example, you were to lose, or Facebook is a great example, because Facebook, you can lose access to your Facebook account anytime, basically, if they decide to. If you don't have your data stored somewhere and you were just connecting to your Facebook and you lose access to your Facebook ad account, then you effectively lost access to your Facebook data. By having a full-on data pipeline and a data warehouse, you own your data. You're getting it out of Facebook and storing it under your data warehouse. So that's another advantage of, well, not going with the all-in-one solution. Also, all-in-one solution, just like any very niche solution, it's very difficult to find the right people to work with that. You'll need expert in that very, very specific platform, which is much harder than to find a good just data engineer or a data analyst that knows SQL and Python, right? And those guys can work in Google Cloud Platform or Snowflake or any other cloud provider, but someone that knows Power BI doesn't necessarily know Tableau, for example. And they tend to be very expensive. So not necessarily, well, the specialists also tends to be very expensive, but the platform itself, they start off as being not very expensive, but then the licensing cost per user per month, and then sometimes you have multiple tier. Like, okay, if you just need the dashboard features, it's that much. But if you need the data transformation, and if you need those connectors, and if you need a higher refresh rate, the cost just keep on rising. And at some point, this becomes this massive like liability that you have, and it's really hard to get rid of because you cannot just replace one part. You have this all in one, so you're kind of stuck with it. So I would be very, very careful to use that. And one last thing I want to mention about this is what tends to happen is people that go with the all-in-one solution, they start off, okay, cool, we have this, it takes care of all of our needs, but then, okay, it doesn't do this. So we're going to do this workaround here around the all-in-one solution that was supposed to do everything. So we have this other thing that was a pain to build just to go around the lack of features from the all-in-one solution. And then this other part starts to grow the more missing features you have from your all-in-one solution. And almost always you end up with this side thing being bigger than your all-in-one solution, but it's all a workaround around your all-in-one solution. So there's no such thing as a all-in-one solution, and I would just stay away from it and do any data transformation outside of those dashboarding tool. It's much simpler like that. All right, so you'll need to draft your data platform as shown in the data governance step, and that's pretty much it. So just try to keep this as simple as possible, but honestly, you'll need someone who's willing to put in the time to look at the requirements from the discovery and data governance and make sure that you're choosing the right solution, because it is extremely costly to decide halfway in a project or even after a project that the technology you've chosen is just not appropriate for your need and you need to migrate to something else or build workarounds. It's very costly. So it is worth to put in a bit more time and making sure that you're using the right technology. Okay, so here's the last step of building your data strategy. So let's get to it. And it is planning the implementation and kind of scoping the whole thing, right? So I won't go into too much details about like how you're breaking it down into project. This will vary on how you're doing it at your organizations. I'll go over how we do it quickly, but one thing is for sure is you're gonna have to evaluate the effort required to answer for each project, right? So you've listed out your questions and data governance and even the data architecture, and you even listed the business impact each question would have, but then that's only one part of the story. The other is how complicated is this to do, how much effort, and basically what you want to find is are those quick wins that also gives value, right? So you want high impact and high feasibility. So if this is very easy to do and high impact, I would start with those questions, bundle those into a single project and start there. This will give your data initiatives some momentum. You'll get the stakeholders even more involved. And it's just a great way to start to eliminate low-hanging fruits, right? So that's the first thing. And this is a technical part, because to know how complicated something is, the person to evaluate that needs to have a good sense of like how much data transformation is needed. Is the amount of data manageable, or we need to take extra step here because if not, the cost will get out of control. Stuff like that. So you'll need either like a senior data engineer, consultant, a data architect, or even like a senior data analyst, at least to kind of navigate and know what's complicated and what's not. All right. And when you divide that into project, you want to make sure that each project delivers some value. So I'm not a big fan of having a project where we lay the ground for everything that we want to answer down the line. And then the second project is maybe like setting up like the security and all of that. And only at the third project, we start getting some tables and dashboards. I like to have each project to generate value and dashboards and answer some question right away. So that's how we do it at Systematik, and it works well and it generates momentum, which is super important because it can feel like it's going to take a long time before we see a return on investment on data initiatives. So it's always good to get some quick wins. All right. So each sprint or small project should have a clear goal, deliver value, and I'll let you read around every steps, everything that we think should be included in a single project. But one thing I'll say is it is crucial to resist the temptation of overloading a single project with too many things, because what will happen is the team building that, if there's too much packed into a single project, they will neglect documentation, alerts, data validation steps, and everything that makes your data pipeline manageable over time, right? So they will get you those quick tables, but at the cost of maybe lower data accuracy, no way to monitor if the data stays accurate over time, no alerts. And this might be fine for a single project, but the more you're going to add on to that, the data it's going to become a mess, and the data initiative will die because it's not generating result or inaccurate result. So I would avoid being too optimistic of what you can squeeze into a single project, and that way you won't neglect documentation and data accuracy. All right, so that's it for the overview. I hope this was helpful. In the next video, we'll go through the data strategy workbook. So we'll complete it step by step. I'll show you how to do it. You can make a copy of it and do it for your own organization. So see you there. And if you have questions or comments, feedback, or anything, leave that in the comment section below if you're seeing this video on YouTube. And I'll see you in the next video. All right.